And we have today here Kristin Feireiss, who has been successfully promoting architecture in her exhibitions in her AEDIS gallery for over 30 years. And she's going to tell us more about it. She has also been a director at the NIE, at the Netherlands Architecture Institute in Rotterdam. And she has been, as Julia mentioned before, a member of award juries awarding architects and architecture. And after that, followed by Anna Ramos, who is now the manager of the Mies van der Rohe Foundation. And she's going to tell us more about it. She has been a practicing architect, and she also lectured. And she was also part of a jury member, which I'm going to question her later about, at her university. And so welcome, Kristin, for the first session.
Und das geht dann noch weiter. Okay. It's great to be here. It's great to be invited. I congratulate the whole DAM team and Peter for this fantastic exhibition with this research, I think, which was never done before in that way. I'm very excited on all the lectures. I was listening, and I like the atmosphere of these 1.5 days, because from yesterday evening, when there was a keynote and speak, until today, we were talking all the time about this issue. Not only in the conference, but at the dinner in the evening, and even this morning, when we had breakfast together, we were talking about that. So I think, okay. Okay. So this is great, and I'm happy, Peter, that you put this theme of the agenda of your museum. Unfortunately, it was actual for decades. It is still actual. So maybe there will be a moment when we don't have conferences in this way anymore, because the problems are solved. But it don't look like that. So you said, Peter, in your speech, we put women into a ghetto, remember? Some hours ago. So this happens in architecture, in science, in music, we are in business, in art. But my question is, and what we have to discuss later in this round, who put women into a ghetto and how the architects react, architektinnen react, the women in architecture react, because I think this is an important part. Margaret Atwood, maybe you know them, fantastic writer, winner of the Friedenspreis des Deutschen Buchhandels some weeks ago, and also in Frankfurt, when she was asked why there are not so many successful women in literature, she said, we all know it's not the fault of women, and I read that everybody was applauding. But this is right, but what should we do with this answer? I think the answer is a bit too easy, so maybe we can concentrate on that. It's not only what she says, women, they do what they can, but it's also part of the women to change that. So the watch is extremely unfriendly, here, the clock, but I cut a lot of my text, so I hope it's okay. When I was asked to give a short lecture on AEDIS, it was clear to me that it's not impossible to cover 37 years of AEDIS in 20 minutes. So I decided what you already see on the screen is architecture, women architecture at AEDIS, and some of you, some left, will find you back at the screen. Though this shows without thinking of a percentage of women in our exhibition. This came out over all the years, so that means that there are a lot of great women, powerful women, and actually I like that. And I hope you enjoyed as much I enjoyed it, the photo, when we put together with my assistant this show. And all of them who were speaking today are, for me, role models. We will discuss it later, and there are different definitions maybe, but there are role models. They made it, and you have to make it against whatever is around you. So, but I don't give comments to all these photographs. I see it here. Yeah, okay. And if you later have a question, I can answer. While you are looking and enjoying these photographs, as the system is, we have the architectin, we have a slide of the exhibition and of the catalog. So this goes through, and finally yesterday I figured out that we have forgot a lot more. So, but this is now I have to finish because I don't make you crazy, Julia, now to have another. So, I will talk while you are looking at that. I will talk on ADIS. And I like to do it because there are more and more institutes, galleries, organizations in this field communicating architecture, partly supported, partly not supported, partly as a brand tool for companies. Also this happens. And so I think I cannot talk about architecture, but I can talk about architecture, but I'm not an architect. But that's the reason why I really was happy when I was invited, so that we all together can reflect. What is that? What is, can be, or should be the role and responsibility of this institution. And when you were laughing, I saw, okay, we did it well. And I want to talk a bit about ADIS as one example. So let's start with a statistic, which is boring, but helps you who don't know our institute to put it in a context. In 37 years, we did 635 exhibitions on architects and architektinnen. We published 500 ADIS catalogs. We sent until today 7,000 newsletters to each event. 2,400 journalists worldwide received the newsletter. 82 international universities took part since we opened in 2009 the ADIS Network Campus. And we had workshops with these 82 universities from all over the world, and 156 public debates at our ADIS Network Campus. So, gives about the history, briefly. ADIS Architecture Forum opened in 1980 and was the first private architecture gallery worldwide. My partner Helga Retzka and Helga Retzka died unfortunately in 1984. We were not architects. I studied art history and philosophy in Frankfurt and became journalist, writer, and curator, and worked for newspaper and radio. Helga was responsible for the DAID culture program. The first, because we still talk about women, the first comment when we started ADIS from people who did not know us was, "Your husband must be an architect." It was not the case, but it was typical for that time. The ADIS goals from the very beginning were and still are to communicate architecture to a wider public, not only to experts, to make people aware that architecture is part of their daily life and that we all have a responsibility for what happens around us and we can raise our voice. We want to show and confront visitors in our exhibitions with a wide range of recent architecture built in process or even visions. And visions, we can talk about later, but I have to hurry, are very important for the future of our life and of our cities. We want to convey different architectural concepts, approaches, and projects as integral part of our culture and society. We do not want to promote a special architecture style like postmodernism or rationalism or whatever. When I was director of the Netherlands Architecture Institute, the largest museum for architecture worldwide at that time, I followed the same strategy as I had developed at EDIS. I strongly believe that it's not the target, mission, or goal of these institutes to promote and to favor a special style, but instead to offer a wide range of themes in architecture and urban planning and to discuss it with the public. And Peter, I'm not so good in compliments, but your museum is a great example for that. I really have to tell you, and it is the truth. We are also not ones to present architecture drawings as part of art. This was very often done in galleries, but as part of the creative process. This has unfortunately consequences in what was the reason from the very beginning until today, and not to frame drawings. It's important with passepartout and everything, but to put them between large glass panels, focusing on the process. That's what we want to show. This was the reason why we did the catalog, and it was also a fantastic talk with Max Brotech, who had a gallery at that time in New York. He said, "Hey, why are you doing catalogs? You should sell the drawings." So both is okay, but we have had a different approach. This kind of presentation did not turn out as a successful business model, as you can imagine, to sell something. With two exceptions, very nice exceptions. The opening show of Peter and Alison Wilson and the exhibition of Alvaro Sisa's sketches on Berlin, both was bought by the legendary founding director of the DAM, Heinrich Klotz. So you have it in your archive. And I think it was not a bad choice. A short example, are looking at that? Okay, it makes. When we had the exhibition, the first exhibition in 1983 on a project of Rem Koolhaas in Rotterdam, it was a great success. Our first exhibition space was 40 square meters, but it was fantastic. Critique was great, but we did not sell anything because at the beginning we did not realize with this way of presentation we cannot sell. So, and then these drawings came in a little package to New York, and Max Brotech framed it, had wonderful, did a passepartout, had wonderful frames, and when we were there at the opening, he sold at the openings exhibition all of the sketches we had before in Berlin. We are also not one to present architecture drawings, and though this REM example was remarkable, and we have to decide to go in a different direction or to follow our way, and we followed our way. We also never asked for entrance fee, not for the exhibitions and later not for the events at the EDIS Network Campus, because we, as my partner Hans-Jürgen Kommer and I, as communicators of architecture, see what we are doing as a cultural service for the public and the international architecture community. And there are a lot of institutes like the Academy in Berlin, they have a lot of money, but for each event they are doing, lectures, discussion, whatever, they ask for entrance. And what concerning the financial concept, because we had no money in the back, I can talk you when you ask me, but I'm looking for my minutes and we can talk about this later. With our ADIS exhibition during nearly 4 decades, I think we wrote architecture history, and the catalogs, which all have the same size, square format, are important tools for our corporate identity and communication. But when we did it like that, we didn't know that it works like that. Besides this indispensable pragmatic issue, my target at ADIS and the Netherlands Architecture Institute was, and still is, to deepen the understanding of international architecture and urban development, including the cultural, societal, and social economic factors involved, to a wider public. The expert all knows that. As director of the Netherlands Architecture Institute, I installed and invented the Rotterdam Architecture Biennale, and I'm very happy on mostly young architects, and I'm very happy that it still exists. I brought greater attention to the transformation process affecting cities and have carried out groundbreaking research in this field. Central was for me the relationship between man and human being, and architecture, as well as the city as a dynamic, creative, social space. The publication and exhibition, Blank, Architecture and Apartheid, at the NEI offered, as one of the first, fundamental research on the influence on apartheid on architecture and the city planning in South Africa. And also the exhibition and publication towards Total Scape provided an extensive analysis of contemporary architecture and urban landscape design in Japan. Because we did, and this analysis, what never was done in Japan, we got a lot of money, luckily, from the Nippon Foundation, because they saw it as a social project, not as an architecture project. With the book Informal City, I did together with Hubert Klumpner and Alfredo Brillenburg, maybe some of you know, we opened up the discussion on modes of urban informality, and last example, the publication Architecture in Times of Need, highlighting innovative, sustainable and affordable housing to redevelop New Orleans. I think you will remember that, Lower 9 Ward after Hurricane Katrina. And a very nice side effect was that I met Brad Pitt, because he was the initiator of that. But he was not so impressing as I thought. But it's also interesting. All these exhibitions and books score how architects, women or men, must address issues of sustainability and social justice in public buildings, housing, city planning. About our ADIS program, I can make it. With our exhibitions, for sure, we want to create an interactive or interaction between the visitors and the exhibition. Not only looking through, not only giving informations, but also sometimes to create emotions or maybe aggressions, doesn't matter, but it was emotions. We present heroes in architecture and we show and support the upcoming generation. And we like the dialogue between them. That was the reason why we, with only very few exceptions, always opened 2 exhibitions at the same time. Most recently, an exhibition on the renowned architecture office Della Scofidio Renfro on the Shed, fantastic, I can inform you later if you ask me, in New York, and at the same time the emergent studio, and I'm sure you have never heard the name of Jennifer Marnon from LA. By the way, both women. But this was by chance. We don't select it that way. Peter Cook said, already decades ago, you have the sniff for talents, and while he was touching his nose. As one example for many, Sarah was a superstar and unique and great character. Unfortunately, nobody knows how she really was. Edith did the worldwide first show on her work more than 35 years ago when she was not known at all, and we were friends until her death. And the first show was in our first gallery on not more than 40 square meters. Maybe we can talk when we talk about role models, I want to come back to her. Edith's Network Campus. In 2009, my partner Hans-Jürgen Kommerl and I opened next to the exhibition space the Edith's Network Campus, an urban laboratory. This was a platform for contemporary urban discussion. At the ANBC, we condensed the global challenges facing our urban environment into a number of research projects, which we discuss with interdisciplinary architects, and which also were the subject of Edith's workshops with international universities. And actually, they like to come to Berlin. Maybe Edith is not the only reason, but Berlin is a great role model for a lot of experience you can make also in architecture and city. At December 18th, whenever you are in Berlin, for example, we have a lecture at ANCB with Richard Sennett. I'm not sure if I was asked if I can give any advice for women in architecture, because each of us has a different story and had to follow their own way. But I can say something from my personal experience, very simple and should not sound boring. You have to follow your passion. You have to believe in yourself. And when I heard the lecture on Anna, and she said, I'm not able to stay in the first row, we have to learn that. Yeah? This is important. And if you believe in yourself and in what you're doing, and you have a clear position, there's a German word which I like a bit better. It's called Haltung. So, and in our history, to finish, we have Edith's history. We had so many ups and downs, mostly financially. It was not a success, but what you said, it's exactly the same. How to survive without sponsoring, a monthly funding. When you ask me, I'll tell you the story, but now I need some minutes. Finally, some examples of my experience about losing and winning. Also, we all should try as much as we can to win. The new castle in Berlin. It's only 2 minutes, yeah, okay. I was fighting against this hybrid monster from the very beginning, and even made an Edith exhibition and catalogue with alternative proposals from serious international architects at the time when the plastic castle was built. Now it is reality, and I still think it's a shame, because it don't fit to what all people, not only architects, from the rest of the world think about an innovative, creative city. This is the opposite. I failed. Next museum, M20, at the Kulturforum in Berlin. I started some weeks ago a petition against M20. Second time after the castle. The Museum of Herzog de Meuron at the Kulturforum. as it was not primarily about the architecture, we can discuss it, but about the non-involvement and non-participation of the public. They were not informed at all. Our proposal was to build a Baugestell. I hope I can explain it, which is, for example, building law in Switzerland for all public buildings, to show with a scaffolding the dimension of M20. Mit einem Baugerüst die Maße von M20 zu zeigen in the concept of the other buildings around. And with that, to initiate finally an open public discussion. I heard that Mrs. Gritters, our minister, was very angry. I see that as something very positive. But being realistic, I think nobody can stop the project. Also, the interest in this open petition was astonishingly very good. Pritzker Prize, my last. I finally want to tell you about something I could decide by myself. This is not all the time the case, and this is very important. I quit officially my position as a member of the Pritzker jury. Actually, I was the first Pritzker jury in 39 years, German Pritzker jury in 35 years of Pritzker Prize. Because it was, and I explained it carefully, and it was somehow accepted, because for me, as a person, it was impossible in my profession and passion communicating architecture worldwide to stay behind the last decisions and the directions in which the Pritzker Prize seems to go. I hope not, but it seems to. I want to end, thank you for giving me these 2 more minutes, with a quote actually I found yesterday. I think I love it. It's from Simone de Beauvoir. Women who don't demand something, again, women who don't demand something won't get anything. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, everyone, for having me here. Thank you, Kristin, for this beautiful lecture. I don't dare even to speak after your wise words. This is not a lecture about the Barcelona Pavilion, of course. I will introduce myself first. I am the director of the Mies van der Rohe Foundation since a year and a half now. But before that, I am a 43-year-old woman with 2 children and a husband. I became an architect in the year 2000, and at ETSAP in Barcelona, and I ran my office for 15 years, alongside with having a part-time associate professorship in the Barcelona School of Architecture. I used to teach construction science there, so materials, materiality, detailing, not really the theoretical part of architecture, but how to make buildings and spaces. And then there I also ran a very nice diploma jury, which was by coincidence or not, made up of only 4 women professors. The 4 members of the jury were only women. That was obviously not a coincidence. The president of the jury only asked women because the other 16 jury were made out of only men, and one of them had a lady. But then everybody started asking at us, why are you only women? What happened? And of course the answer was, why don't you go and ask the others? Why are they only men? But then we had to face all these pink tribunal jokes. It was funny that yesterday Eva was also talking about the pink pavement. And you will later see that I'm using the pink in some of the graphics as well. Because if pink is already clear that it's for ladies, we can use it. Then I became director of the Mies van der Rohe Foundation through a competition. We were 18 people going through that. I think we were 5 of us or 6, I can't remember. I'm not sure about that. 5 or 6 were ladies. What I remember is that the jury that had to ask us about our future plans and so on, it was made by 6 men and 1 woman. And since I'm holding this position, I am not today, but so often being the only lady in the room and the only lady in the meetings and the only lady in the decision-making, places, that it does not stop surprising me, because it was not happening like that when I was a practicing architect. There are all the women in the construction site, either from the side of the construction company or from the client or collaborators, whoever. But, and also in the university, although there are less women than men teaching, you don't feel the loneliness that sometimes I feel being in meetings for 12, 14 people and being the only one. Part of my program, the program I presented and the program we are building is based on 3 axes mainly. One is the Barcelona Pavilion itself. We are using it. We have implemented an educational program for children and youngsters in Barcelona. So they come and get a sensibility on architecture. It's not that we want to explain the history of architecture, but we want our fellow citizens in Barcelona to experience the beauty of architecture. We strongly believe that if general population loves architecture, the general level of architecture will be raised up. And we are working hard on that. So we have started with the youngsters, which means 16-year-old people, and we are now implementing the 6-year-old children program. So we are, of course, using the Barcelona Pavilion, which is an amazing place to teach beauty of architecture. We have that. Not only children, but regular citizens. So we have a large open doors program. Open doors meaning that it's free entrance and extra support on interpretation of architecture, because that's something which is, we all here can visit this place and enjoy it. But when we are not architects or trained in history of architecture, we might not even notice that this is something special, because people say, so what? Yeah, of course, like everything, like every contemporary architecture. And then there's all this story about 1929 and how Bauhaus, we've been mentioning before, was relevant and changing and trying to express the new time to come, and how successful it was that it has been adopted by everyone later. But there's a lot of things that regular citizens just don't know. They can't come, they might like it, but we are trying to give them extra information so they don't only enjoy this place, but they learn to look at modern and contemporary architecture. Not only our building, but we try to teach them how to be on a space and what to enjoy in a space. That's the program. Well, of course, there's something very important also in this program connected to the pavilion, which is the art interventions. We do invite artists from different disciplines to come and dance this building, or make music with this building, or transform the building. By doing so, and we really try all these interventions to be site-specific, meaning that thought for that place and impossible to repeat any other places, we try to learn about it. Because we have the eyes of the architects, but when we bring the eyes of a dancer, then the space is understood radically different. Or when we bring advanced music technologies, like we had for the Sonar Festival last spring, which is making the whole building vibrate, like it was really, you were walking without shoes and you could feel the whole thing moving and the glass, and it was, yeah, very scary, but we took the risk. And it was amazing because you could see people just lying on the floor or being, we saw before an image of people touching earth walls. We of course have always everyone touching our travertine walls and stone walls as well. So there's an organoleptic relation with this building, and artists are usually enhancing this more. Well, all this goes for the pavilion. Then we, of course, have, let's say, research and dissemination aim, because the foundation was created to rebuild this building. This building was rebuilt because the Barcelona City Council wanted to get the building back for the city, because it was something that carried the name of the city during the 20th century in dark years for the real city, but lucky name that traveled in the history books, in the architecture history books, or in the exhibitions, or whatever. The Barcelona City Council at that time, in the 80s, was not only into this building, but as you all know, it was a huge bet for quality architecture and, moreover, urban design to transform the city, to think that architecture and urban design could transform a society and improve it. And a little bit like what we saw in Vienna yesterday, there was this big effort on transforming the city through architecture. So there was a belief in architects and urban designers, and 30 years later, the city is completely transformed and improved. So we have this research program, disseminating, organizing symposiums, seminars on the building, on Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, on Lily Wright. I was very happy to see her in the exhibition upstairs, of course, and we are very nearly to create a Lily Wright grant, which in the first edition will be devoted to her, to get a deeper knowledge of her and to disseminate and publish her achievements in architecture. It's so difficult to say when you are creating with the four hands, you and your partner, how can anyone say who created what? Okay, that's almost impossible. When you are partnering with someone, the building is the result of the work of both. Now, Lily Wright and Mies van der Rohe were together as partners from 25 to 38. From the 40s, they were both around 40 when they met, until 53, 54, which are, I am now that age, and it's not the same being together in the 40s than being in the 20s. They really had you really need an intellectual and, professional connection. The influences of Lily Wright in this building, but of course in all the work they were together in the Weissenhof, in the Glass Room, in the Barcelona exhibition spaces, in this building, and in the Tugendhat and whatever. Her influence on the materiality, the colors, the strength of text, the texture of the materials, which is obviously that clear in this building. It's something that probably if Ludwig Mies did never met her, this building was not like this, So we have to get deeper into her knowledge. That's just to get an insight of 1929, and Ludwig Mies van der Rohe talking to the King of Spain, who's the thin man with the mustache. Lily Wright is somewhere in the back part, not in the first row, definitely. The lady here is the queen, the one with the dress, of course. This is the pavilion then, and this is the exhibition that made this building eternal. Because the original building was demolished after the exhibition, but Philip Johnson took these images. I think you kind of see it, it's to the right up, it's one of the images. He took it to the exhibition, which made part of this international style exhibition with European architects in the MoMA. And here began the second life of the building. Exhibitions, catalogs, books, And this is to stress the importance, once more, of architecture exhibitions. Well, exhibitions of any kind as a way of disseminating knowledge. And then somebody sees something, and then there are interconnections in your brain happening, and so on. So the third part of what we do is the Mies van der Rohe Award, European Union Prize for Contemporary Architecture. We are committed by the European Commission to award every 2 years the best building in, the last edition was 40 countries across Europe. This whole story starts by asking independent experts and partner institutions like this institution, and also orders of architects everywhere in all the participating countries to propose the buildings that deserve to be in the list, let's say. So these experts send their proposals, and that makes a list of, the last edition, 355 buildings. Those 355 buildings are included in a catalog and are the best of European architecture according to our experts. That has to be clearly said. Any prize, any exhibition relies on the opinion on the curators, the experts, the jury members. So it is very important that we accept it as it is, that we name who are the experts, who are the juries, and then it is also very important to know the criteria. So our experts are writing us, why do they suggest that building? Because it's not the same saying this one, but saying this one because of this and that. Because that's, of course, then helping the jury on the second row. Yeah? We try, or I really think that we have to be very open and transparent in all this process, because the more transparent any process is, the more reliable becomes, or at least understandable for others who are reading the same process. Because we are into dissemination, we have this year created also, the catalog is something that already existed. We have now created this app which is helping you wherever you are to know where is the nearest EU Mies Award nominated building. For your information, the nearest one here is the Commerzbank. Is that the name? Yeah, Commerzbank. We have this updated for the 2017 edition, but we are working into bringing it back to the origins. So whenever you are, you can just go for the nearest. And you do have information and plans, and then our strong recommendation is to go and visit, because nothing like visiting architecture. I work on exhibitions and catalogs, but nothing like visiting architecture. Now, the jury this year for the Mies Award were these 7 people, which are in alphabetical order, and only by coincidence, and now it's true, the ladies are the last 4 names, okay? But they are in pink because I want you to all look at them. How do we make a composition of a jury? We try to balance practicing architects, directors of architecture centers, theoreticals or critics, but also people who are not architects, who belong to what we could call society. In this case was Mrs. Omilanowska, the former Polish Minister for Culture, who has a background in architecture, but is not a practicing architect. Because we need the others, the society, to help us understand, not to be that much in our own world. We also have to balance gender. This year, for the first time, we had more ladies, because 7 is, you cannot have half-half. We have to balance regions, not countries, but regions. We have to balance ages. We have to try to balance approaches to architecture. So you can imagine it's quite a difficult story, because you also have to balance agendas of such an important group of people. But once you get to have a nice jury, they have to be also nice people, able to talk to each other and intelligent discussions and so on. Once you manage to have that, you submit all these 355 projects from everywhere in Europe. And the first thing is that they go to this list of 40, the 40 shortlisted, which are definitely relevant if I have to organize a trip through Europe to visit architecture. I would go and visit these 40, for instance. It's a nice thing. Now I want you to look at this. These are the buildings where ladies are involved as leading partners of the offices. Okay, those are 17. Either they are the only partner, either they are partnering with another man, either is a group of people partnering. Okay, but I'm not talking about women that work in the office, but that are in the list of the directors. Okay? So as I said before, it's just not possible to say, when you have 2 people working together in a project, which part did who. Yeah? So all this is the architecture of women. Also, there were also men involved in that, but it's the architecture of women. It is true that from this list, only 3 images are from studios that are having the name of the sole female partner, right? Which is, well, and not even, only two here have the name of the lady, which is Alison Brooke Architects and Amanda Levete Architects. Okay? The other lady here is Lene Tranberg, but she's hidden, let's say, in the name of the office because she's keeping the name of her partner. Well, these are the 5 finalists of the Mies Award this year. And from these 5 finalists, 2 of them were by offices led by a single woman, Alison Brooks and Lene Tranberg. We never looked for that. We have Peter here who can promise you, okay? This was not made on purpose. I have done this for now, for us, okay? But because we aim to use the Mies archive, the EU Mies Award archive, as a data to organize, research or to look back or to look at what's happening now. Oh yeah, I will go very fast, sorry. I'll go very fast. So this is the project by Lene Tranberg, and this is the project by Alison Brooks. And just for your curiosity, this is the Emerging Architect winner. It's an all-male group of 5 or 6 people, but all male. And this is the winning project for the EU Mies Award this year, with this renovation project in this huge 70s brutalist, to connect with the other exhibition, building in Amsterdam. Also by a group of, I think they are altogether 5 or 6 men. This is the Atlas, which is a publication that tries to trace what happened in the history of the last 30 years in architecture through the Mies van der Rohe Award, which, as I said, is only one way of categorizing information. Different juries or different stories would make a different list. So what's interesting in this book, or what we try to do, is not only show architecture, but try to find out some data, like defining, I don't know, European boundaries, or finding out which are the most repeated programs in the history of the prize, or doing some research about each of the topics, like collective housing, which are the countries that are building better quality collective housing, or who's spending more money into it, or in what kind of cities is architecture happening, in small villages, in big towns. But this is what I wanted to share with you. I now have 3-4 slides, and I'll be fast, but this is about sex in architecture. So coming from the list of the Architecture Council of Europe, we have in pink, the ladies, of course, number of architects per country. And we can here, each of us, try to look what's the situation in every country. But now this is a more interesting one, which is who wears the trousers. And then this is the sex proportion of the directors in studios with finalist works. These are only the finalists, the 5 best. So 42%, and this is from 88 to 2015. 42% of one male director, then 20% of all male directors, 17% of man and woman, 14% of mixed men and women, 2%, 5% of one single lady in the front, and is of course Mrs. Hadid, and 2% of groups of women leading an office, which are the Graftons, which are these year's Biennale directors. But now what I just did is to compare with what happened this year. Because we have to look, we want the prize to look to the future, not, yeah, it's talking about the past, but let's see what's happening now and from now on. So we had 17% of single male leading the office, 50% of groups of men leading an office. This is telling us about the shift from alpha male to groups of people, although it's a lot of alpha males. But then we had known in the finalists, this is only a list of 6 projects, so of course it's not a statistically, we cannot rely on these numbers. And then what we had is this amazing 33% of offices led by a single woman, okay? Which are 2, I know, but if we come here, it's 33%. I want to be optimistic about this. This is a cloud of the names that are most oftenly repeated, studio name scaled in relation to number of nominations with a minimum of 5. So these are the people who have been successfully building, let's say, in Europe for the last 30 years. But then, because I want to be positive, okay, we have to make this effort to visualize which are the female names in there. Because I don't know if we need star architects. I think we do not. But we have to enhance and make visible and underline wherever things are already happening, and then be positive on there, yeah? Because we are already building a lot. We are an important part. The only task that is left is to extremely support and make visible and once and again repeat that what's already normal is maybe not yet in the press or maybe not yet in the papers, but it is already happening. So our message is that we have to work out and underline what is already happening. That was it. Thank you very much.